So we're all in agreement the Employee of the Month award should either be going to Zooble or Gangle, right? Probably Zooble, though.
Who's the winner of Employee of the Month? Me.
Oh, hey, Gummy goes back. Not gonna lie, I legitimately thought this episode wasn't airing until the following day of the actual air date, so if I sound a bit out of it, or if the pacing of this video feels weird, then that's why. Didn't have as much time as I hoped to mentally prepare for this one. With that being said, Digital Circus Episode 4 was quite a treat, especially if you're a Gangle fan. I think this episode has some of my favorite character expressions out of the 4 so far, and that can mainly be attributed to Gangle's scenes, which is something I didn't really expect from her character in particular, since her whole shtick was having a permanent happy or sad face. Yet the twist they took with her character in this episode completely changed that. It had already been public knowledge what characters the upcoming episodes were going to focus on, and this was the episode focusing on Gangle. The entire cast of this show is already quite entertaining in their own ways, and I don't actually dislike any of them, this freak included. But admittedly, Gangle wasn't in my top 3 and maybe not even in my top 5 before this episode. She was one of those characters that prior to now, I kind of just felt bad for her, and that was about it. She got bullied by Jax harder than anybody and never really fought back. She was lovable, but we gotta admit she was also pathetic. So it would make sense to have someone like her be closer to abstracting or simply having a mental breakdown. Besides Pomni, but I'll get more into her in a bit because she's the sleeper hero for these guys right now. The episode opens with Ragatha trying to teach Gangle how to pitch a baseball to Jax, which of course results in Gangle's comedy mask being broken, like always. But instead of dealing with being sad for the rest of the day, Zooble steps in and finds a spare happy mask for Gangle to wear. It's even plastic, so it'll break less easily. Also got a rare instance of Jax kind of feeling bad for once, sort of. Yet at the same time, he never had faith Gangle would be able to actually do the pitch anyway, so. One of this episode's greatest strengths for me was continuing the incredible pacing episode 3 had by going with the simple setup into fulfilling payoff by the end. Last episode, it was Pomni holding her breath, whereas this time it revolved around Gangle's new mask, which brings up the adventure for this episode. Initially, Kane wants to do another horror-themed one, but since they literally just did one, they suggest Kane use the adventure suggestion box those guys had been trying to get him to use for a while now. These kinds of scenes of Kane completely being detached from the main characters of the show getting sprinkled in never get old to me, because it really does feel like no matter how hard these guys try to level with this guy, it's just never going to stick. Which isn't his fault per se, Kane is just programmed to be this way, so there's not a whole lot he can do. Even still, me as a viewer feels bad for these guys now more than ever after episode 3 in particular, because he tried to have that whole heart-to-heart with Zooble when it came to their body dysmorphia, yet even now still forgets something as simple as the suggestion box. Though he does end up giving in and picking one where everyone works at a fast food chain for a day. And who better to act as manager on this adventure than Gangle with her new happy mask? Also, Zooble gets to come on an adventure for once, but it's at the expense of Kinger sitting out for the entire episode. Probably why I didn't vibe with it as much as the last one. Where's my Kinger content? This is fucked up. In all seriousness, it was cool to actually see Zooble on an adventure, albeit they didn't have the most significant role during the actual adventure since it was mainly a Gangle episode, as seeing them have to partake anyway was a treat. Really hard to consider this an adventure though, because this was one of the realest episodes we've gotten so far when it came to not only the setting, but how the characters are acting in said setting. Like, there wasn't even any background music. Having an episode about working in the food industry revolving around Gangle, a character who switches between masks for faces, was low-key genius, it really was. On top of us learning she used to be a shift manager back in her old life and, you know, also wanted to draw but never really could. And yeah, in case some forgot, these characters can still remember bits and pieces of their past lives. Their old names are the big things they can't remember. At least not yet. Now, I'm someone who's worked in 3 different jobs in the food industry, one at Red Robin, one at Panera, and one at a local pizza spot a few blocks away from my house. Panera was for the most part fine, but the other 2, it was more bad than good, and I'm sure most folks watching who've worked in that field before would agree. It can be extremely high stress environments where staying positive can be very difficult, but it's one of those things where you can't afford to lose these jobs at these specific points in your life, so the culture surrounding said jobs essentially encourage you to keep pushing and not let these feelings get in the way of the restaurant losing any business by you crashing out. As if you're putting on a mask for these customers to keep the machine flowing. This is exactly what Gangle is dealing with for the entirety of this episode. She's like an allegory for depression. Despite putting on this new shiny happy mask that's designed in a way where becoming sad is harder than normal, Gangle slowly begins to lose her sanity throughout the workday. Jax is of course no help, constantly looking at the clock during the entire shift and torturing Ragatha a bit on the side. This was probably one of the wildest acts of violence this guy has committed so far, but these guys can't really feel much physical pain, can they? The principle still makes it insane though. Zooble was just kind of doing their own thing, while Ragatha was completely out of it for most of the episode after accidentally spraying some sauce in her eye. Her scenes were pretty funny though. She definitely felt like the main comedic relief for this episode. That didn't change the fact that she was adding to Gangle's stress levels increasing. Even saying she prefers when Gangle has her sad mask on because she's less annoying in that form, they're pretty fucked up when you think about it. I know she was high or whatever, but you know what they say about those states of mind. Sometimes people's true colors come out in their true thoughts. Perhaps that'll be explained more in the Ragatha-focused episode next year. The main takeaway I took from Gangle here is she's one of those people who doesn't have a whole lot of self-worth. She doesn't feel like she values herself, which is something Zubul deals with too. Zubul's case is hating how they look, while Gangle feels like she can't actually do anything of use to help others or make them happy. So it makes sense these two would gravitate towards each other, having those shared struggles. Something that Zubul picks up on towards the end of the episode as well. This show has really been selling me on Zubul lately, man. These last couple episodes especially have done really well with their character and the interactions they've been having with others. As for Pomni, she was doing her job quite well, dealing with some weird customers every now and then at the register, and mainly this guy, Orbs Man. My guy sounds like he's from Spamtopia. Of course, the biggest surprise from this episode came from the return of Gummy Goo and his other croc buddies. Ragatha did say Kane has reused NPCs before, so this adventure turned out to be one of those instances. Sadly, this might not be the original Gummy Goo because he has no memories of the time he spent together with Pomni. It's sad, but I didn't actually expect Gummy Goo to properly return given the show is only getting 8 episodes total. If anything, Pomni being able to keep her cool and just let Gummy Goo go shows how much more well-adjusted she's become after all this time. In a way, it's sad that she had to see the face of an old friend walk away and let him go, but at the same time, she now realizes there would be no point in trying to get the old him back. It's impossible. I've been seeing some people say Gummy Goo may have actually remembered Pomni as well since he had those sad expressions on his face, which if that is the case, makes things even more messed up because that can mean he realizes digging up these past events and getting too attached to each other will just lead to him getting hurt again. I feel like all those moments indirectly strengthen episode 3 and Kinger as a character too, because Pomni's moments with Kinger last episode felt like the big catalyst to set her on a more stable path in the circus. Gloint Queen coming back was cool too.
300 cheeseburgers for all my precious spawn.
Gangle's mental state continues to worsen by the hour to the point where in the moment of watching that scene of her walking through the back areas all gloomy, I thought she actually might abstract. Of course she didn't, but it did feel like she was on the verge of it, you know? She spent all day trying her best to make the workday go well as humanly possible, and she felt like she completely failed with nobody really on her side. At one point, she goes outside to take the new mask off and becomes sad again, something Pomni takes notice of when taking out the trash. Pomni tries to comfort her, but Gangle quickly goes back to putting on her mask of fake positivity for the good of the business. It wouldn't surprise me if she was getting more sad than usual during this adventure too, is because of the pre-established connection with being the shift manager in her old life. Perhaps this was something she did somewhat enjoy in the real world and thought it could be one thing to make her happier longer than normal if the adventure was centered around it. The part where Pomni offered to close for Gangle was such a sweet moment, as Pomni clearly knew Gangle wasn't doing very well mentally and staying in the adventure any longer would have prolonged the suffering. And man, that final scene of the adventure was such good eye candy, holy Christ, like the Gangle looking up at this night sky and throwing the mask. It really rounded out how bad I felt for Gangle. This poor girl had dreams that I imagine were related to drawing based on what she was saying during the training video for Jax. So seeing her throw her fake mask of happiness into the darkness felt like she was finally free in a sense, until getting hit by a truck. Please tell me I'm not the only one who thought of that scene of Diablo being trapped in Gold Experience Requiem. With Gangle back in Kane's office, we once again see how little he cares for the actual well-being of others and more about his definition of what fun is being achieved. As even though Jax was clearly the worst employee here, Kane gave everyone the same performance grade of a B+. Without a doubt, my favorite scene in the episode was Zubul comforting Gangle at the end when she was worried about everyone hating her. Honestly, with how Gangle was painting Ragatha in a way where she might be one of those people who only pretends to care about others' problems and just says what they want to hear to never feel like the bad guy, maybe Zubul is more down to earth than she is. I'm not trying to shit on Ragatha or anything, she's still my second favorite at the moment. It's that there's still a lot of unknowns surrounding both her and Jax, especially, that have yet to be explained. Very good episode overall. It was probably my second favorite, with episode 3 obviously in first until further notice. Definitely let me know what you guys thought of this episode after watching it. Did it make you like Gangle even more than you did, or did it stay about the same? I'd love to know your thoughts. Quick thanks to my gold tier patrons, BFP4, Izzytorium, Draconish, and Agender Fox. You guys' support really means the world to me. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.